I mean, he's the reason why I started. I remember the first time I watched it, I was laying across my bed just scrolling on YouTube and it popped up and I watched it. I was like, holy shit, I can do this.
All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 4 of the Market Gardener Podcast by Bootstrap Farmer. I'm here with Carl Binger, Paris Natural Farms, Carrie Daniel, Bootstrap Farmer, Michael Bell, Dallas Half Acre Farm. And today we're going to basically look at clips from our interview with JM Fortier on our Bootstrap Farmer channel. If you haven't seen it, click the link above. And gentlemen, let's watch the first clip.
We're talking about sound advice. You should always be on your farm the fifth wheel. You should always be the spare tire.
Right.
That's the way to set up a farm for it to be durable in times. Like you need to be the extra hand. But everything needs to be organized so that the workload gets done without you. That's how you run a farm. Takes time.
Yeah.
But because when that wheel falls out, and you don't have that spare tire, you're fucked. And that can really create a lot of mismatch and problems. And so the way I'm setting up things is like I'm organizing it so that if I'm not there, it's okay. But I'm there.
Right.
I'm still there, but I've learned that from kitchens.
Sage advice from industry legend. What's your take on it, Carl?
I was shouting amen.
You've pretty much set your farm up to do this very thing.
Right. And for me, it's freeing what he said, because it's true. I mean, farming is so demanding. You know, most farmers don't get to leave their farm. You know, think about the dairy, the farmer who's got all their dairy cows, they've got to get up 4 a.m. and then they've got to do it again in the evening, and they just never get to leave. And most farmers are that mentality that nobody else touches my stuff. And I have found such great reprieve from being able to walk away from the farm. We can go take a family trip, and most people that are doing what we're doing can't do that because they've got to water the plants. They got to have, they have to be there to make sure that stuff stays alive. And so I would echo his sentiments 100% on that. And it's every not only from that perspective, but the whole goal of life. You've probably found a little bit of meaning in life if you realize like it's not about you, it's a succession, right? So there was a profound quote that I still remember. It was like, from the moment you enter into a position, your goal is to start finding your successor. And so when you do that, when you have that mentality, you start coaching people, bringing them on, and you realize you're not, you're expendable. You don't have to be there. But it's definitely nice sentiments.
You're there, affirming. Yeah. It's just nice to hear somebody say it in a way that you've been practicing.
Yeah.
That it's a proven system, right? What he's been doing up there for the last 20 years. In part of necessity, part of innately, you've just had to set up for your farm. So it's just nice to hear that you're not the only one, so to speak. Directly opposite of that, Michael, you're a lone wolf, buddy.
That clip gave me anxiety.
Good. But go ahead, and then hopefully I'll make you feel better.
Yeah, no, I'm envious. I admire that. I wish I had that person that I could rely on to take care of stuff when I'm not able to be there. I've got a couple of friends that if I have to go out of town, they know how to turn on the solar powered water pump and open the water totes, and like they know how the water system works. And I mean, they could take care of it for a couple of days, but everything he said, I would love to have, but I don't. So I really don't have much to comment on that on that clip, other than I'm envious and completely understand what he's talking about.
But at the same time, as we talked about in the last episode, that is not how you're set up. Mm-hmm. To some degree, you don't want to be set up that way. And so it's one of those things where you can look at advice like this and you can directly apply it to your operation, because it's exactly what you do and what you need to hear. right? Or you can take it and go, I understand the wisdom of it. And if one of 1,000 things were different, sure. But
or I strive to when I'm able to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I can use that as like context and a goal one day.
right. And that's not to say that when you do retire from being a teacher that you don't, not that you have to go all in, because you obviously want to stay at a certain size to allow yourself to do other things. And so even bringing in somebody to do a quarter of the work or 20% of the work,
Like plant carrots.
you can still take, plant those carrots. Jeez, dude, you're anti-carrot.
Yeah.
Another t-shirt idea, anti-carrot, Michael Bell. But it's just good that you can recognize that there's wisdom in what he's saying, and there's also wisdom in knowing that's not applicable to my situation.
I think there's also, as I said at the beginning, when I started rambling, is that there's a sense of pride of doing it yourself too. I like my mom's side of the family. There's no way they would ever let anybody do anything. And I did that for the longest time. I mean, I still remember the first time, I was always been a DIYer. And the first time I decided to hire out a project, and it was to put gutters on my house. And the guy came down like in an hour and a half and wanted a $750 check. And I'm like, wow, he did. But I'm like, you got to go back up there, throw some sweat on your face, like, 'cause I was like, it was my first time ever having to write a check out to do something that I could have done, and I struggled with that. It was my own thing, but that's how my family is too. But it's very rewarding to be able to do that, and so there's I think a bunch of different perspectives on that. There's one, you take so much pride that it's really difficult. The problem is you kind of trap yourself because you can't leave, And 3, you don't really have a succession plan. What happens if you get injured? What happens if, seasons of life change? So,
and I think also with that is this understanding that you are the 5th person, which means if I do hire somebody to plant the carrots, there's no way in hell they're going to plant the carrots exactly like how Michael wants it, but it's going to be in an acceptable level to allow him to go do the things that either he wants to do or it's more important of his time.
Yeah.
And anytime you have employees, there's that give and take. Sometimes they do it less than what you would. Sometimes they completely miss the mark, and an equal amount of time, they do it better than what you would have done anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a give and take that winds up canceling itself out a lot of times.
You also have and I feel like this is with anything that we do, like you think you can do it better than anybody. So like you've got to be able to let your ego not get in your way of letting others help you.
Yep.
That's really tough because I've been a perfectionist and accused of a perfectionist, and I feel like I'm a recovering perfectionist. But it doesn't bother me so much now when I have Gage. He's a young guy, very proud of what he's been able to do, but he'll still he's only 18, and so I've been able to allow more grace for that. And it's like, oh well, it's there's probably some loss and financial loss in there too, but you get over some of that.
Well, you have to. Again, I always like to go, where's this money and labor going? And it may be a loss in the moment, but if you aggregate it out, it's like training. It's you're paying to train. It's on the job training.
Exactly.
There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be step backs. There's going to be corrections and oversteerings. And through that, you're going to get somebody that's more in step with what you're going to do.
Right. I think something to note on that, though, is also on this topic is scale. Like where are you at? Like JM's facility and his operation, he can't do that by himself.
Right.
I mean, he could, his personal life would be absent.
Mm-hmm.
So, where we're at, I mean, we're probably like our operation is probably a 2 full-time person job right now. I think that if I were to add up all the hours that everybody puts in a week. In yours, I mean, granted, farming can take every minute of your time. I mean, you could probably spend.
Yeah, I was about to say you could probably. You need somebody full time just to pull weeds.
Yeah.
But is that going to pay the bills?
No.
Probably not. And any other farm that I've ever been to, except for like 1 or 2, there's weeds all over the place. I mean, that's just a part of it, So there's things you want to do, and to the point you made on a previous podcast, not everything is going to yield a direct sale. It may just be something you want.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a time and place for it. You're going to have a tour out, pull the weeds.
Right.
If you're right in the thick of harvest season and everything's full out, you can let some of that stuff go and pick your battles.
Yeah. You have to.
All right. Let's take a look at another clip.
I think the best way to educate young people is for them to be in it. Like, if you have a kindergarten, I'd like to have the garden. If you have a high school, why not? Why wouldn't the high school have a garden? And the garden feeds, the cafeteria. And then that cuts down on costs. It's just, you're making sure that the students are eating healthy greens, healthy foods. And honestly, if you look at the size of this thing here, that feeds the restaurant year round. And that's that's a lot of people throughout the year.
For sure.
It's 60 heads, 4 times a week. That would be kind of for me, that would really be awesome. And then having classes where people go and they do nursery, they do potting up, they do these things. They need to do it, for kids to feel it, they need to do it. And yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, so for context, the question I posed to him was that there's vocational programs like welding and automotive and shop work and now coding and things like that. So how do we introduce that? And this is coming from a place where every so often there's this round of memes that goes across Facebook talking about we need more farms and schools. And while I don't disagree, the main issue is we need a farm and school that is maintained year round, because about the time school lets out is when this thing is really jamming.
When you harvest everything.
And then what happens is the school garden is abandoned. They come back in the fall. It's a complete shambles. It's run over by weeds. It's rotted from neglect. And there's this whole year round situation of loss that happens with the school garden, because most of the time it's, hey, we're not going to hire a teacher to teach gardening. Somebody else is going to do this on top of everything else they have to do as an educator. And then we're putting this, school gardens need to be in schools, but that has to go to somebody. And it's often volunteers, and life happens and things go by the wayside, and it's competing with band and football. And God forbid we do anything against football and all the other stuff that goes on in the school. It's the easiest thing to neglect because it's so often not paid. Right. And so the question was, how do we start building that into a vocational program? Obviously, I'm going to liken his response to kids just need to go do to anybody wanting to get into farming and gardening. I sit across from Carrie. I listen to phone calls you do all day long. How do I do this? Have you done it yet? Have you done just planted anything yet? Or I want to be a market gardener. Have you gone and walked a few farmers markets and saw what you liked and what you didn't like? This goes back to what we were talking about. Do you go to the grocery store and watch people buy? They want a quick, easy answer without doing the work. And so having a facility inside of a school would be fantastic, but it comes with so much extra stuff that it's real easy for Nancy to talk about. We need a garden in the school. Well, of course, nobody's arguing that we don't, but how are you going to pull it off? You want to raise your taxes? Because that's what it's going to take. Let's go to Michael first. He works at a school.
Yeah, this hits pretty close to home because I have a school garden. Just received a $3,000 grant from the city of Dallas.
Can I say one? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We have to remember this is the Market Gardening Podcast. So why are we talking about schools? It's because as Paris Natural Farms grows, as any other farm that we know grows, they are going to have some type of skilled labor. Mm-hmm. So if a labor force is going to be developed where it's not on each individual farm and farm owner to spend the time, money, and resources to train armies of people that need to come into all these farms that we would like to have happen, it's going to start at the school. So now, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, this hits home with me and my school. The biggest thing you mentioned was the amount of time it takes and the volunteers it takes. And of course, I don't do volunteers for much of anything. I just rather do it myself. So, and our school doesn't have a ton of people that would volunteer anyway.
You're busy delivering food all over.
Yeah, because I'm off actually delivering. But all that to say is, I think it's very important that we get kids at a young age. The younger, the better. I mean, it's like anything. If you show a 14-year-old kid that's never watched football, he could care less. He's already found his interest. He's already found his loves in his life, what he wants to do. But if you show a kid, even if he's 5 or 6 years old, and then he doesn't do it again for 6 or 7 years when he's in 8th grade, and there might be a gardening class or an elective or something, he's going to remember planting broccoli when he's in 1st grade. I guarantee it. That's just the way kids work. But you have to plant the seed.
Well, and we use this example. So we were mirroring his on-farm restaurant with all the other lessons you could take from the starting point in farming. There is restaurant supply. There is understanding your market. There's running the numbers. There's planning. There's all the things that goes into a farm as far as maintenance and infrastructure and things like that. It's not just the planting. But if we're going to teach farming as a vocation, there should be a whole curriculum built around the actual running of a farm, just like there needs to be curriculum on how kids just need to do the taxes and manage their own finances and things like that. But this business administration of it should be part of that curriculum as well.
So I teach in Mesquite, which in Texas, everyone knows the Mesquite Rodeo. And it's a very big, Mesquite's kind of known as a cowboy town.
What's this now?
It's not world famous, but across the South, it's pretty famous for the Mesquite Rodeo. We have no ag program in the entire school district for Mesquite. And I actually sell salad to a bunch of people at the administration office. So I asked one day, I was like, hey, why don't we have an ag program? We've got paramedic, we've got fire, rescue, nursing. We have all these other careers, but we don't have anything for ag. And she looked at me, she goes, I don't know. I said, well, we need it. Like, we need to bring it back. And I started talking to her about what I do. And she goes, well, we just have to see if the kids are interested. I laughed. I said, well, ma'am, they're not going to be interested because they don't know anything about it. Like, no one just thinks they want to grow. Like, we have to introduce it to them. And I said,
just for the record, I was not interested in algebra. There it is.
Or chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, if you put me in front of a class of 50 or 60 ninth graders, I'll have them interested. I'll have 5 or 10 of them interested within an hour, because all you got to do is talk money. You tell them you graduate college and in 2 years, 3 years, they're making more, they're making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year within 2 or 3 years, whether that's working for somebody or you work for somebody for a year, you learn, and then you go start your own farm instead of being in debt $200,000 in 4 years with a degree you're probably not even going to use anyway.
Right.
Like, one of the most things I'm passionate about farming is, other than land, yes, I understand that, but we're in Texas. We can find the land. Like, if you can find land to farm on, whether it's a friend, a church, whatever, but that's a whole nother topic. Farming's not expensive to get into. Like, you can start, I started with literally almost nothing other than the land. And you can grow it and you can build it. So you can think of it as like a 4-year college. Mom, let me do this for 4 years. Let me stay home.
It's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper.
And in 4 years, you're going to have a business that's growing and making a ton of money instead of a degree, and you're starting at ground zero trying to find a job. Yeah. And, then I talked to another lady, and she goes, and I was telling her the same thing, giving her the same spill. She was pretty high up. She's one of the assistant superintendents. And I was telling her, and she goes, Mike, you need to go to job fairs. You need to go to job fairs and set up a booth with a little laptop with the pictures of what you do, and just explain this to people. If you really want to get people involved, you should go to job fairs and tell them, I'm not offering you a job. I'm offering you a new career. If this is something you're interested in, then we can sit down and talk. And I honestly think that's the only way we ever reach the masses, is if we start thinking of ourselves the same way that other jobs think of themselves, like at job fairs. And I know it sounds crazy, but I'm going to start doing them in the spring.
Well, to the first administrator's point, like, we have to see if there was a complete lack of interest on her side. So she equates that to lack of interest for anybody else. And I guarantee you she's the one eating an Olive Garden.
Right.
It's not a priority for her. It's not a care. And unfortunately, that's where we're trying to think about all this market share and market opportunities, but we are trying to serve through local food and better food, not that much of the population. The rest of the population is already taken care of. And whatever they choose to do and eat, fine. But we're talking about opportunities and educational chances for people it's a whole vocation that is not even near opened up yet.
Yeah.
All right. Let's watch another clip, shall we?
Let's do it.
there's a lot of crops that people could improve on. It's like, and it doesn't take me a million years to see it. Like I walk in the field and I'm like, okay, this is dialed, this is not. I think greenhouse production, there's a massive opportunity for people to learn how to grow better without having more tunnels, but just like putting heat in their tunnels, learning how to graft plants, learning how to, better read plants, how to lower and lean, how to, just like work with the plants and the temperatures. That for me is a game changer because you can double and triple your production with the same amount of work.
Right.
Just by learning the proper skills. So that's clearly one. Winter farming is another one. Like people, they, shut down their operation in climates that are way warmer than we have here, and we grow year round. Yeah. And we make a profit with these greens in the greenhouse. So that's another area where I see that there can be improvement.
So it's been several weeks since I did this interview, but if I remember correctly, it was the question was, how do you know when to drop a crop? It's the same question we covered in the last episode. How do you know how to drop a crop or keep one? What's working, what's not? How are you deciding which ones to keep? And when we had our little break and had dinner, we were talking about your broccolini and how much space it takes up, and would you do it again? And would you do it would you trial it out smaller or something like that? And this immediate, the notion of him being able to walk into any type of farm situation and go, that's not a good use of space, is a pretty valuable lesson. Yeah. So we had a real world example of that earlier, but let's maybe kind of enhance that answer for me.
JM's got a set of eyes though that surpass, your, Michael's and mine years combined, right? I mean, he's been doing this and he has that level of expertise and, subject matter expertise, we'll even call it at that point, where he can walk in and see that. For me, I'm still learning that. Like when he talks about grafting, I mean, I love that idea. Last year I was like, that's the stupidest thing. I watched another farmer do. I'm like, why would I ever do that? And then I started researching it, and it's like, all right, that's next. But the reality is a lot of this stuff is, I mean, for a young farmer like me, it's down the road. It's something I'm trying to attain for. Right. It's nothing that I can really just turn on and say, I'm going to start doing that.
Well,
because I don't know.
It comes with experience, and the same, again, to your point, a micro bit of experience that I've had in going to so many different farms. He's had the extra ability to go to Europe and all these other places across the country to see how other folks do it. They do it in the metric system over there, but basically the ability to see so many other places up and down the longitude and latitude is really going to help him look at something and go, is that going to be right or wrong? We're talking about lettuce crops and which ones work and which ones don't. To talk about the Asian greens being able to turn way more times a year to add value to a very high value crop in spring mix. If we look at spring mix as a crop, which one of those Asian greens is going to do better outside, inside, under shade, indoors? It all matters, which means you have to basically go in there and trial that stuff out.
It's definitely, that's definitely a seasoned conversation, I think. I mean, I'm still stuck on the grafting thing because it's so intriguing to me. Like somebody would literally sit and graft tomatoes, and I know it's
2 weeks from now. I'm going to call you up. You're going to come up here. We're going to have a good talk about grafting.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm ready for it, by the way. But I just don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, so I know the first time I do it, I'm going to fail, and I don't want to fail this year. So I've got to plan that fail because it's going to be, something very isolated, and it's going to be time and research, intensive and some financial, obviously, investments.
I may turn over the reins on this and just let you interview this person about this topic specifically.
All right. Yeah,
it'll be fun.
Really interesting. But anyways, getting back to it, it's all, I think,
another reason to subscribe.
Very, a seasoned conversation right there. You've got to have that.
But okay, well, let's dissect that a little bit further. If you're going to be seasoned, what does that take? That means you're taking time out to learn your craft instead of doing it. It's taking time to go visit Michael and for Michael to visit you, and you two have an opportunity to sit here and talk about it. And you don't have to go around the world like JM did, but you could visit your regional network and go to regional meetups and the dinners and stuff. Right. You've been to a couple of these things with us, and you never walk away going, well, that was a complete waste of time. But you have to make the time to do it.
Right. And I've noticed just over the past few years that same ability. Like I can tell, now I can look at a plant, and certain plants, I can tell what's wrong with it. Like I know from a distance, from me to Michael away, I can tell if a plant's got, aphids on it now. Whereas first year I didn't know what an aphid was. Looking for these big, massive insects. And, why is this plant dying? I don't see any. They're like, well, you got bugs or something. I'm like, there's no bugs, right? But now it's like from a distance, I've got that. I've got that empirical, it's within me. I've experienced it. I've seen it, but I still struggle. Like I look at my beets. I'm like, why are, they're just not getting bulbs? And I don't know why they're not doing that. And that's probably some nutrient thing, but I don't know the exact reason why. Whereas JM could probably look at that and say, oh, you're low on boron and copper or something. I don't know, something pH is wrong or something.
Right.
And that's where it gets pretty interesting when you can kind of come up and look at that, a bed and see the crops, see the lettuce, see that it's, whatever is missing is obvious to you, more obvious.
So pretty much exactly what he said. And I have this motto, and I'm going to sound like an idiot when I say this: keep it simple, stupid. Like I don't play with what works. So like grafting tomatoes, you can't wait. I could care less about grafting tomatoes. Like I grow sun golds. They grow perfectly. I sell the crap out of them.
People love them.
They love them. I don't need to fix something that's not broke. That, and like I said, I know that seems shallow, and you always want to keep learning, but there's other parts of farming that I want to learn about. Experience, again, goes back to the same thing we said all night. There's nothing that beats experience, and that's just, you said you could tell aphids a mile away. I can plant one thing of lettuce, and I'm reminded about how good my soil is and how important it is, because that bed over there is brand new. This bed's 4 years old.
Yeah.
Like I can tell the difference instantly. And I'm like, this is why this is doing so much better. And that bed kind of sucks. So experience plays a lot into that.
Well, to your point of like, he's excited about grafting, but you could care less, but there's other parts. Like that's why the more farmers we get, like you're going to have your specialties and you'll have yours. And so it just creates more diversity within the
and that's a great point. Like I said, that's why I want to meet, like literally I wish I could meet every single farmer in North Texas and sit here and do this, because I have a feeling me and you are going to text back and forth about it.
Well, there's only probably 3 other people, so I mean,
I really think you'd be surprised how many there are in Dallas.
I'm sure there are.
There's 4 or 5 in the Dallas area that I know, and then there's some new ones coming up.
Yeah, it's growing. That's for sure.
I think Dallas in 10 years, people are going to look around and be like, damn, Dallas is kind of the hub for
hotspot.
Yeah, for new farms.
Yeah, it's definitely prime.
Like if you have a CSA of 800, it's not the same as if you have a CSA of 150. 800, you're kind of not in real interaction with everyone, but 200 customers, 300 customers, you can manage to know them quite well. And that's, I think, the beauty of small scale farming is like to really have a local scene.
So I run a CSA style type, and he's 100% right. I wish there was something I could play devil's advocate with or disagree with, but I have probably 80 people that I sell to total, like either bi-weekly or weekly or whatever, and I know all 80 of them. Very, like 30 of them's inside my neighborhood, and my kids even know where to go deliver, because I'm send them to deliver sometimes on their bicycle, and they even know their addresses. I know their birthdays, because I always try to give free stuff on their birthday or their anniversary. So if I miss their anniversary, I always try to give them a free week for their birthday or something, just to let them know. And like you said, 100 people you can do that with. 800 people, you just can't keep track of it. And honestly, as much money as that would be, I don't want 800 people. I've always said I want to sell to 100 people.
When we had the salad club, we topped out just under 200 people a week. And I knew maybe 20%, because we're selling to offices, we're selling to very busy people. They signed up online, and I delivered to like a kitchen I never ever talked to these people when I went to deliver. Conversely, farmers market, we had the same people, I knew all of them, but selling the way we did in a remote type fashion where they could sign up without meeting me. Now, you would think that we would get a lot of signups at the market, but the people that bought at the market didn't do the salad club, and the people that did the salad club did not come to the market. And that there was maybe 2 to 3% overlap, but not that much. You were the exception, and just a couple of others. But
did you find that good or bad?
It was great because
basically 2 businesses.
Right. And we ran it as 2 businesses, and we ran it a third because we did the events and the pop-ups. Those people didn't come to either one of them. So it was pretty unique. I mean, again, you had a little bit of overlap, but not anything I would cater a whole other business. Like, I wouldn't say, well, these people will buy from me. The most ideal situation is, yes, every time you do something, all your people show up all the time. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing something so different, like we were in 3 different instances, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, for me, it's all about what's your goal. I mean, everything is so subjective with these conversations, your context, and what's your goal here. I mean, for us, we always want to be connected to our customers. When I was early on in my career on this, or in the early adventure stages, I was researching a lot, and there was a guy that started off doing just what we're doing. Then he got so big, he had this massive operation. It was all fully automated. He didn't touch a single thing. All he did was sit in his desk and wrote checks and, managed people. And at that very moment when I saw what he did, he sold it at the end because he just, lost interest, and it turned into, his hobby turned into this big old organization that he, it's so far removed from what he originally started with. And that, I still remember that moment watching that video. It's just like, because he wasn't condemning, he was just saying, yeah, we're just selling, but to me it was like, you lost your focus, and if that's what you want to do, great, but I can tell just by speaking to you, I know what you're trying to do. Like, this is sustainable. This is your thing. Kathy and I, we don't want to get this thing so big that we're so far removed. 800 customers doesn't sound like a lot still, but it's probably a lot to manage. Definitely, what's the guy on Polyface Farm? He says that, which I think I've quoted on here a couple of times before, but he'd rather have 100 customers that sell 1,000 versus 1,000 customers that sell 100.
That's the only thing that I disagree with Joel Salatin about. The only thing, and I've listened to everything he's ever published and read every one of his books, is I'm just the opposite. Like, I understand his math, but if you lose 10% of those 100, that's a big dent for whatever reason.
Yeah, and it's okay to go against the grain.
And I would rather have more customers, and so, like, honestly, I sell to a lot of people a $5 bag of salad mix, and that's it. Except when I have tomatoes, and then when I have more, it's great. But I enjoy that more people up to a point, instead of getting 10 people to buy $100 from me. I'd rather have 100 people buy 10 from me.
This is one of my favorite things about farming is there's no wrong answer here. It's what works for you. It's what works for you.
And what do you want to do? What do you want to be?
Let me ask both of you this. How many times have you went into something thinking it was going to be one thing, and it turned out to be completely different, and you're thankful for that?
I started this whole thing thinking I was going to sell firewood and chicken eggs and maybe some plants. I mean,
that's the quote of the night right there.
Well, and like, I say that because I feel like some people want to get into market gardening, and they're probably listening to you going, there's no way I want to be that small. $5? Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. And then there's some people who be like, I can't believe you're not out in the field every single day and like that. And you can't put your own stuff on somebody else whenever you're not walking in their shoes. And it's what I like about podcasting and what I don't like about podcasting, because if any of the naysayers that comment from time to time were actually sitting here with us, I think that tone it down a little bit. If they spent all the time that you and I have spent together, all the time that you and I have spent together, and now in a situation like this, we're just openly collaborating about ideas. We're not pointing fingers or blaming or saying, well, my way's better. Yeah. Like, everybody would just chill out a little bit. And I think it's just important to put yourself in front of as many different opinions as possible and figure out what works best for you.
Yeah. And take bits and pieces.
Right.
I think I said it earlier too. I'll take 20 little bitty bits and pieces and make my farm better, but I won't change my whole farm.
Right.
Yeah. It's also contextual and subjective. I mean, that's the beauty of farming. It's your canvas,
That's a great way to put it.
Do with what you want.
Carl coming up with all the quotes tonight. Man, he's a
You weren't lying when you said he was a poet.
I look at he's a sweetheart too. I love it. All right, well, let's do one more, and then if anybody wants to watch the rest, then go to the other channel.
Modena, my wife, could tell you this. I couldn't sleep at night anymore. It was that that idea of writing a book about what we were doing was so present in me that I couldn't sleep. And it lasted for many months until finally I said, you know what, I think I need to do this. There's a calling here. And, you know, we were strapped on cash. We had 2 young kids. Farming was, you know, everything. And so I was taking a sabbatical for a full year to write the book. I borrowed money. We hired an extra person, and I started to write full time for a year. It was a big bet. And the book got refused a few times. I even paid for the illustration. I paid for the editing. I did it all. Eventually, the book became what it is now.
I think that's an interesting one to end on because I see what he did on his book. Imagine turning down JM for the book now.
Yeah.
I mean, how wild that is. But to some degree, that's what both of you are doing with your operations right now. You have all this other stuff. You're a full-time teacher. You have your own tech company. And you're putting all of that and more on pause to chase after what you're doing at different scales, different ways, all across the board. But I think this is a good example of if you're going to get into farming or assist farming as a craft and as an industry, you do have to do some self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
And look, I very much appreciate both of you coming up here. You made the drive. You're away from your family. We're up here. I don't know what time it is, and we're going to be up here, but you take time to participate in the industry to give back, whether that's to 2 people or just for the 4 of us, 5 of us sitting in this room right now. But you know that if you want to push it forward, you can't just look in, you have to look out a little bit. I think he did the same thing with the book. We talked about you kind of being an ambassador and taking time away from everything you have to do to then drive to McKinney and give a speech and then sit down and give an interview with somebody else. It's very selfless. And again, you didn't get anything for it. You're just getting free pizza tonight. You know, that's all you're getting. But I think it's important to take the time to give back.
Yeah.
And I like his notion that book 20 years ago sparked this whole reason we're sitting here right now today. And that kind of connects us all. You have the book, I have the book, you have the book. And then here we are sitting here talking about it all these years later. Where are they going to be talking about you in 20 years? You never know.
So the only thing I'll add to that, and it's very well said, was when I do this stuff and people, you know, make comments about it or whatever, I always tell people I'm paying it forward. Because if it wouldn't have been for JM book, taking the time to write the book, when he really had no idea what this was going to turn into, and more so for me, Curtis Stone's videos. Like I've watched those videos. I still watch those videos today. And I mean, he's the reason why I started. I remember the first time I watched it, I was laying across my bed, just scrolling on YouTube, and it popped up, and I watched it. And I was like, holy shit, I can do this. And I was hooked. Next 3 months, all I did was read and watch everything I could find. And if it wouldn't have been for him, there's no way I would have ever found this. So, like, if I didn't want to come up here, which I did, I wanted to meet him, of course, then I honestly sat there and think, well, what if Curtis didn't want to make those videos?
Right.
You know, so, you know, I always try to pay it forward. And I think about that because, like, in 20 years, I want to see 100 farms like mine in Dallas. And it's a big thing. And, you know, it may be crazy to some people, but man, it'd be fun to drive around and be like, I helped that farm get started. Right. I knew him when he was 18, graduated high school, and I helped him put up his first tunnel. You know, and I've got a few that can do that now, but that's my goal. Like, no matter how much money I ever make from farming, seeing farms that I helped develop or get started means more to me than any amount of money I'll ever make.
I love it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I would. Same. I mean, literally, we probably started scrolling through those videos at the same time. I don't know whether to thank them or smack them sometimes, you know, when I get them. So I started new projects like, thanks, Curtis. Thanks, JM. But I found JM through Curtis. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I would say thank you for putting in the work and doing that, and then smacking for quitting. Yeah.
I asked JM, we went to lunch after this interview, and I asked him, you know, what him and Curtis's relationship was like. And the way he described it is very much like either one of you two and me. I could call you up, bust your balls a little bit, have a little bit of dialogue, and just they're friends. And I like that. I have a similar story. but it's going to be in 2 weeks when this other person is here. And it's very much an origin story for me. And it was the difference. I remember this moment just very distinctly, and we'll get into it in a couple of weeks because I don't want to have people have to listen to this twice, but it's very much what you said is the paying it forward, giving it back to somebody that done that for me long ago.
Right. Yeah, we are, as I said earlier, we're pilgrims and pioneers still in this space. I mean, we're such a small niche, and people that have gone before us, JM, Curtis Stone, Elliot Coleman. I mean, he's the godfather of all this, right? I mean, it's pretty neat to be where we are, that we're still probably a main part of this story and journey, Bootstrap Farmer as well, as 20 years from now, this is probably going to be old news, right? Everybody will probably have a greenhouse in their backyard or a tunnel growing their own food again.
We can hope.
We should be so lucky.
Yeah. Something like Planet Mars or something, everybody's surviving on their own. So yeah, I think from that perspective, it's awesome. I look forward to being able to instill more. I mean, I've lost touch with some of the being very intentional about getting young people and community out just because we've gotten so busy, so focused. And this year, last year now, since it's January 3rd, the 4-H team that came out there, I was like just kind of a godsend. I just had this realization like, oh yeah, that's right. Don't forget about other people. Because that was one of our main goals, was to be very community oriented. We want couples to come out. My wife and I, we found early on that if we had issues, the garden always resolved it. We'd be able to just go out and talk. Guys have a hard time staring each other when in conflict, it's difficult to stare at somebody in the eyes when you're in a conflict situation. And so we'd go out to the garden and we'd just work, and so we wanted to pass that on and just totally forgot about that, to this year. And so our farm is supposed to be a place of healing and just also a place of, to be able to pass on and to teach others and just be that whole package, right? It's not just about business and growing food and, making money. Right.
I got one quick thing. I had a DM about 6 months ago from a guy, and he's like, "Hey, long time no see. Would love to come and see your farm sometime. I'm in Irving," and I get them all the time, at least once a week or something like that.
Everybody sliding into Michael's DMs.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're all dudes. And so I just emailed back. No, honey, just don't listen to it. So I DM'd back. Hey, anytime Saturday and Sunday mornings from 4 to 10 are the best for me. Emailed right back. Great, I'll be in touch. 2 weeks ago, he sent a DM. Hey, can I come this Saturday? I said, I'll be there. Shows up, and he got out and he looked familiar. Like, he looked so familiar. I said, I know you. And he laughed. He goes, I was wondering if you'd recognize me. And I said, what's your name? And he goes, Alvis. I said, Tingley? And he goes, yeah. I was like, I coached you in 7th grade. He was one of my old 7th grade students in Irving. He's 23 now. I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. And he goes, I've been following you for years, coach. I just never had the guts to reach out. He goes, I want to start this in Irving.
Wow.
My parents got an acre, and I think I can do this in the back, in the back part of their acre. And he goes, I was hoping you'd teach me. I said, absolutely. So we've been, talking back and forth, and hopefully get him going the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Hadn't seen you in, I felt old as hell. Seeing somebody that you coached in 7th grade, and now they're like 23 and got a kid and a wife.
So Carrie, I'm going to put pressure on you because you're going to close this one out. Okay. So again, you're sitting here as the ideal client. You've also been with Bootstrap Farmer. I don't know, how long is this?
August 21st.
Okay.
So what is that?
4 months.
4 months?
That's it.
You and I have been around for the last, we don't know. We've tried to figure this out. Let's just say 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
You were at the opening house when I opened up my farm. Mm-hmm. You're number one client all the way through and through. Now you're here with Bootstrap. You're talking to farmers on the phone every single day. You are orbiting all the chaos that my life is and kind of seeing it. Now you're getting to sit down. What's your thoughts? I mean, just listening to stuff like this.
There's so much more than I ever would have imagined with it. Like, I mean, I get a little bit of peek of your farm, like on Instagram, but like to actually go out there and see it in person. Like, and that's kind of what you talked about, like with agro-tourism thing, like until somebody goes out and like sees it and makes it so personal. I think that's so big. And you talking about, your old student coming up, like, I want to be the stereotype, whatever. But like that started making me tear up because I've seen how much farmers really care about what y'all are doing. Like, yeah, it's a business. You're making money, whatever. But like, there is so much more heart in it than, and even with the customers that I talk to on the phone, like, sometimes they're a little, especially now that we're starting to get a little busier.
And this is what I've been warning you about. The longer into the growing season we get, the more panicked people get.
Yeah.
And the more everything is riding on like everything.
Yeah.
And they may be starting out and they're calling you, and that's why the panic is setting in. If somebody that had been doing it for 3 or 4 years, A, they're going to order on time. B, they're going to give themselves plenty of room. But if they're panic ordering and it's year one, the level of dedication isn't any dissimilar to what they have going on.
Yeah.
It's just the experience of, this is not the end of the world, but this is what I've been trying to impress on you, is like, this is coming.
Yeah.
And this is the type of emotion that's built into this industry.
Yeah. And I don't know why that's been so surprising to me, but it really kind of, it has, like, just the dedication and the emotion that's just built into this kind of.
Yeah. It's really a selfless.
And it's so much community.
Yeah.
Like,
there is.
I've been very
community.
community oriented my whole life. Like, Nick gives me a hard time because I'm on the Main Street board. I'm on the Paris Downtown Association. Like, I'm really try to be involved in the community, and like to see this community now that I haven't seen before. It's just,
and
I can't put it into words.
All of this, me not caring about anything else other than this is why. It's because nothing else is worth my time other than farmers.
Yeah.
And so all this stuff you see me go through about anything outside of farming, I could care less.
Yeah. I get it now.
And that's greatly appreciated.
Yeah. Well,
like I've been around the industry for 7 years now, and I haven't heard one bad word about your professionalism. Now, you as a person is a different story. Your professionalism.
Sorry, that was really loud.
And like,
got the peanut gallery over here.
I've never heard any bad thing at all about you or Bootstrap Farmer at all.
Yeah.
I've been consistent. You know what you get with me.
Yeah, the roots are, and no pun intended, actually pun fully intended. The roots, though, Bootstrap Farmer is what we're doing, which is cool. Your story, Brad's, everybody's story, like the whole story of Bootstrap Farmer, which is why I think it's so personable, and
we get to serve the greatest profession out there with the greatest people. It's the best.
You've been there and done that too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Cue the Star Spangled Banner.
Yep. And then a group hug.
Thank you both. If you want to see the full interview, check out Bootstrap Farmer's main channel. It's highly rated by
highly recommended.
This man over here. And it was fun to do. I wanted to do part of the podcast of just talking about that experience. I don't know when we're going to have time, but we'll figure it out. But anyway.
Next time I get to go.
You
need to start
you and the
it.
bus that I need to take. Folks, thanks for hanging in on this one, and we will see you on the next one. We don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but it'll be fun. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody.